Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Today's community education seminar is about mental health in multicultural communities during this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, Jim, for the introduction. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Boon Wurrung and the Woi Wurrung of the Kulin Nation. And I would like to pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. So while I was actually researching some of the topics that might be relevant, some of the themes and topics, I've consulted some of my friends who actually work in the mental health sector. So while I'm not a mental health expert, I have lived experience overcoming mental health challenges, both as a international student and also as a migrant. So it is from these perspectives and experiences that I'm sort of sharing with the audience today what I've learned. So some of the themes and topics that we'll be covering today would be what is my understanding of community well-being and mental health, and also my experience as a migrant and a former international student. Also, I'll be sharing tips on how to maintain our mental health and also our physical well-being as well. A lot of it would be shared. I'm actually using some of these tips myself as well from time to time. Also, I'll be sharing why I've chosen to be involved in the Multicultural Ambassadors Program at the end. And also we'll be sharing a little bit about the mental health survey that the foundation is conducting right now. So what is community well-being and mental health? So I've been reflecting about this for the last several days. And so I realized that when we talk about community well-being and mental health, in order to decide where we want to go, it's important to really sort of take stock and sort of understand where we are right now. And that means a level of self-reflection and awareness. So to me, when we talk about community mental health and well-being, a lot of it I realize in my personal work, in my professional and in my volunteer work, and also in my personal experiences as well. A lot of it has to do with social connection and inclusion. It's about multiculturalism. It's about diversity, acknowledging that in the communities out there, there are various challenges, various issues that need to be tackled and addressed and understood. So one way to achieve this is really through communication and outreach. It is really to understand what some of these issues might be. And my understanding of multicultural communities is it's not just about ethnicity. It is also about building and deepening that kind of an intercultural understanding between people from different nationalities, religions, faiths, socio-economic as well as demographic groups, as well as people with different gender and sexual identities from us as well. And that means people from the LGBTIQA plus communities as well. So when we talk about what's happening now during this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic, I came across, a friend has shared with me this article that's found on the ABC News website. There was an interview with a psychology lecturer at Tasmania, at the University of Tasmania, and that's Dr. Kimberly Norris. And she spoke a little bit about these three phases that we experience as a community in response to these quarantine and social restriction measures that have been in place for the last perhaps 2 to 3 months. So the first stage would be this stage of a panic and confusion. So and that's precisely what we experience when we talk about those weeks of panic buying of toilet rolls and groceries from the supermarkets. And when these restrictions were first announced, and we see a lot of workplaces and staff trying to cope with this change and wanting the staff to work from home and how to build up the kind of IT infrastructures so that the staff can work from home. There was also a period of adjustment as well, where we were trying to understand what is this pandemic about and what is this virus doing to us, to the community. So after this, so this will be stage one. Then we go on to stage two, and that's when people are adjusting to this new way of life, to a new way of working from home, spending more time with the families, schooling from home as well for children. And so this would be known as the novelty or the honeymoon phase, where and some of my friends sort of jokingly say that they can't even tell from their friends' Facebook posts whether they're actually working from home or they're having a vacation at home, because we are spending more time with our children, and people are playing board games. They are also cooking more often at home as well. So, so this will be known as the novelty and the honeymoon phase. And now, Dr. Kimberly Norris says that we are now going into this phase. It has a name called a three-quarter. This is known as the third quarter phase, which is what we are beginning to experience right now, which is feelings of loneliness, despondency, and frustration because of this physical distancing that we have been practicing. So issues that have been identified, some of these feelings, emotions, and challenges that we have been experiencing would be like shock, anxiety, fear, worry. There's also a lot of uncertainty as well, because every other week we are finding out more about what this virus is doing to our communities and the kind of short-term and also long-term health impacts. And also I noticed that there's a lot of grief that is happening, either because of the loss of jobs, work that we have been experiencing, and for some of us, it's also the loss of relationship as well. For people who have succumbed to the illness, who are also experiencing illnesses, or who have also passed on because of this virus. But we also experience grief because of the missed leisure time that we have with our best mates, with our family and friends, like for example, hanging out for a drink at a pub. So these are the opportunities that have either been lost or sort of suspended in the last few weeks, and so we experience grief that way. And also with more people staying at home, people who do not get along well with their families or the parents or the guardians, particularly for people from the LGBTIQA plus communities, they might experience incidents, greater incidents of domestic violence. So this is something that we have to be aware of when we talk about multicultural communities. And also something that all of us are experiencing right now, which is this period of restlessness and frustration that it's because we've been sort of keeping ourselves away from people that we really want to connect with. One way we talk about community would really to, when we talk about community, so it's not just about, it is about moving away from the individual and how we can build a sense of belonging to a group. And one way to do this would be to build empathy and connection. And so I strongly believe that when we start to connect with other people in our community and we build a sense of understanding and empathy towards people who are like us, as well as with people who are different from us, we build a greater sense of community identity. And with it comes a sense of self-help and resilience. And I certainly believe that together we are stronger as a group, and we can do more that way. So I want to emphasize that when we talk about physical distancing, it is not quite the same as social distancing. So while we are physically apart from one another, we can certainly remain connected that way. We can still remain socially connected through digital media, for example. So this next part, I want to really share my experience as a former international student, as a migrant. And I am very aware that some of these experiences and attitudes that I have, that I had in the past as a student, as a migrant, happened at a time when this pandemic had not happened yet. I also hope that as I share some of these tips and what I did at the point in time can be adapted somehow now by people from multicultural communities to support their own mental health during this pandemic. So, and I remember that when I'm from Singapore, so when I first moved to Australia to study as an international student, I didn't know anyone, so I was very new. And one thing that I did, the first thing that I told myself is that I would be very curious and I would be very open-minded. So I constantly reminded myself to say, oh, let's try new things, and to adopt like a learning mindset so that I would be able to experience new cultures and put myself in new situations and sort of meet new people. The, the very easy way to do that when it comes to connecting with people would be to know your neighbors. And I certainly believe that you're never fully dressed without a smile, to quote a song from a well-known musical. So I think a smile instantly relaxes us and the people that we meet. So if you meet someone in the lift lobby, along the corridors, I think a smile does wonders. It instantly breaks down that kind of psychological barriers and make ourselves appear more approachable and friendlier that way as well. And I think food is a social denominator for all of us. We all have to eat. We all have to cook at some point in our lives. So one way to build relationships with neighbors is to really to share your food. And if you cook a stew or if you bake a cake, can you sort of share this with the neighbors? And I know that with the restrictions that have been recently relaxed and they'll be relaxed furthermore this coming weekend, next week onwards, are we able to invite, a couple of close neighbors over to afternoon tea or even to lunch? It's a good way to really build rapport and to know your neighbors better. Um, I also took a strong interest in joining social and hobby groups as well. I find that that's a wonderful way to really pick up new skills and also to make new friends. And sort of what I'm doing right now as a multicultural ambassador for the foundation is actually to volunteer my gifts and my talents with organizations that would need my kind of skill set and my experience right now. So perhaps we could ask ourselves, could we take this opportunity to really volunteer our time, our resources, our talents with community and nonprofit organizations that really need this kind of resource right now to support their own target audience and their communities. I do know that many organizations, for example, health-related organizations, need drivers, for example, to really drive their people who need medical care to the hospitals and the clinics. Is this something that we could do? So as I move to a new city and sort of interact with new friends, colleagues, classmates, and neighbors, I am a very curious person by nature, so I always try to sort of understand and to appreciate the local cultures, traditions, customs, and etiquette. And I found that in the process, they are also interested in my story, in my perspectives, my experience, and my heritage as well. And I find that through this interaction, I get to give and to earn respect as well. And through that process, I found that I actually grow to be more appreciative and I take greater pride in my own heritage and in my own family story. So when we try to sort of build connections with people from other people in our community, I find that I get to learn from people who are different from me. And in a professional setting, that is very useful because it sort of builds up your own professional context. One way, for example, we can do this online is through LinkedIn. It's free and it's very, very easy to set up. So back in the day when I was an international student, I would actually go to networking seminars, conferences, events, exhibitions, and even different kind of professional networking events. And I noticed that some of these events have actually been they are being conducted online now. So I do know that, for example, there is one organization called General Assembly, and they do a lot of professional development workshops that are now conducted in an online space. And many of them are free as well. So you could just sign up and then take part. So occasionally, as a new migrant or as a international student, there are moments when I feel a bit lonely. and emotionally vulnerable. And I find that one way to get around it would really to build emotional support and safety. And that means I would choose to hang around with people who actually get me, people who actually understand, people who support my vision and my goals in a new place. And I find that it is so important because to be able to confide, say, on a very bad day, if I experience something really challenging, I could confide in these couple of friends who really understand what I'm going through. And that is so precious, particularly when I'm alone in a new place. So, one component, I think one aspect of learning to live in a new place, whether even for refugees and people seeking asylum, not just migrants and international students, would be really to learn to be flexible, to be agile, and sort of challenging ourselves and say, are we able to adjust and adapt to new situations and new ways of living, new lifestyles? Because I find that as we begin to learn to be a bit more flexible and adaptable, we are actually slowly stepping out of our comfort zone, learning to take calculated risks so that we can challenge ourselves and grow in the process. Because I believe that if everything remains the same, there is no opportunity for growth because everything is so comfortable. So from time to time, um, it might be worthwhile to really ask ourselves, am I ready to step out of my comfort zone bit by bit, taking calculated risks so that I can grow and change in the process? And of course, sometimes we will never hit the target all the time. Sometimes we might be fall short of expectations. And so it's good to, I think at these moments when we do not quite achieve what we set out to achieve, it is important to really be patient, to be gentle, and to be compassionate with ourselves. That is so important. And also, if we don't sort of achieve everything that we want to, achieve at that particular point in time, it's okay. Just tell myself that it is all right. I can forgive myself and then try again, and to trust in my ability that I will do better next time. So so I've sort of shared with you what some of these attitudes, some of the steps that I've taken to overcome mental health challenges as an international student, as a migrant in the past. So what can we do now to really adapt and to see what we can do with some of these behaviors and mindsets? How can we adapt them to suit this pandemic that is happening right now? So I would like to break this into two parts. One is about how I think, what I think, and the second part would be what I do. So it's about thinking and doing. So what I'm going to talk about would be really a lot of it is actually uh, fit into this model called CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So this is a kind of model is frequently mentioned in the field of psychology. So basically, what I think, and this includes the self-talk that happens from time to time. What we think is influence our feelings and our emotions, and that in turn influence our behavior and our actions. So that these three components, our thoughts, our feelings, our action, they all influence one another. So by changing any one of them, by changing our thoughts, our feelings, or our actions, we are actually changing other components as well. The first thing that I would like to really talk about would be, I think this is the first thing would be to understand our circles of influence. So knowing what I can and I cannot control. And this also includes taking stock of our own abilities. So knowing what I can do, what I cannot do, and also our resources. And resources is not just about time or money. It also includes the friends that I have, the professional networks that I have, and also my own abilities and my gifts and my talents and my skills. These are all our resources as well. You know, who can I confide in? What are the professional services that are available out there? These are all resources that are available to us. And also knowing what limitations we have. The next part about thinking would be checking our own beliefs and our attitudes. I feel that sometimes I believe that our thoughts, these sort of beliefs and attitudes are formed by our past experiences, and sometimes they could be a long time ago. And it's good to sort of check in from time to time whether some of these beliefs and attitudes that we are holding right now, are they still relevant? Are they still serving us? Are they still supporting us? And if not, what can we do about them? I think in any times of uncertainty, particularly right now during this pandemic, fear is a real thing. Fear of the unknown, fear of the future. I find that one question that is very helpful when it comes to addressing this issue is whether this fear, this whatever that we are afraid right now, are they real or are they imagined? If it's something about the future, say if I worry that I will lose something next year or in 6 months' times, are we sort of too preoccupied with what is going to happen? Has it happened yet? So from time to time, it's good to ask ourselves, is this fear real and accurate? Or is it just imagined? Is it someplace in the future that has not happened yet and we are just projecting and imagining what is the worst that could happen? So one quote that has sort of stuck with me all this while is that many years ago I attended a seminar by Tony Robbins. He's an American motivational speaker and writer and author and a personal coach as well. And he has mentioned this, and it sort of stuck with me. He said that the past or the present does not equal the future. And I find it so empowering because whatever that's happened in the past, whatever that's happening right now has happened or is happening, but the future is still like a blank canvas. It has not happened yet. So it's up to us to create it, and knowing what our circles of influence might be, what we can control and what we can control, we are able to better prepare for what we want to create in the future. So don't let our past failures hold us back from imagining what could be in the future. And what this last part about thinking is that with this increased use of social media, particularly Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, I find that sometimes we tend to compare our performance and our lives with those of our peers. And I find that sometimes it can have a little bit of impact on our mental health because I find that sometimes we tend to curate some of the better moments, some of the more beautiful moments of our life on social media. And unknowingly or subconsciously, we might actually be comparing our lives and our performance with those of our peers. And I'm not sure whether we are aware that sometimes it can have an impact on mental health. So while we share some of these moments with our friends on social media, it's also good to be aware that whether we are comparing as well at the same time, and if we are doing better or worse, is what kind of impact it would have on our mental health. So I think a level of self-awareness would be very helpful in these moments. So after thinking about sort of after knowing and being aware of what we think and how we think, next step would be what we want to do about them. So the first step that I would say would be to really take charge, set a plan or a routine, because that sort of builds a kind of normalcy in our lives. So I think that is very important. So next thing, and it is a thread or a theme that you might have picked up as I've been sharing in the last 20 minutes or so, would be to practice self-care. And this gentleness, this compassion and encouragement to with oneself is so important, so that because I think sometimes we have this attitude to to want to achieve. But when a pandemic like COVID-19 is happening, it has an impact on our lives, in our professional and our personal lives. So it is important to be very gentle and say that circumstances are different. The environment is altered now. And so the expectations that we place on ourselves may have to shift and to change slightly, may have to be modified. So that if we are not as efficient or as effective as before, it is okay. Let's try again next time, and we don't punish ourselves too hard because of that. And I notice a lot of events or communications are now moving to an online space. So for particularly for people from multicultural communities, and if language is a barrier, if digital literacy is a barrier, could we take this opportunity to really explore and to pick up some of these new skills? I do know that a lot of local councils are offering support services in this area, and I do know that volunteers in some community and nonprofit organizations, they are conducting some of these classes online to help people to be more IT literate. So perhaps you could explore some of these opportunities as well. So this next moment we talk about wellness and well-being, and I noticed that there are 4 dimensions that I want to touch on, and I noticed that some of these have been mentioned in previous webinars. I just want to sort of summarize some of these topics that we've talked about. When we talk about wellness, there are 4 dimensions that I want to really pay attention to. And one would be physical wellness. So check in with yourself from time to time whether you are eating well, whether you have set aside time for sleep, for rest, and for play. And if we feel restless, staying at home after a while, are we able to go out? It would be nice to, sort of go out for some fresh air, exercise, go for a cycle and walk. I think that is very important. The second part of well-being would be emotional wellness, and that means connecting with family and friends online or like through the phone. And with the slightly relaxed restrictions that we have right now, are we able to sort of invite them over and to connect with them? Next part would be spiritual wellness. I know this is important to some people. Things like prayer, meditation, mindfulness, and connection with nature. I do remember watching like a documentary about this actress, Audrey Hepburn, and she has mentioned that she feels very wonderful whenever she's in one of her beautiful gardens. There is this connection with nature that somehow sort of calms you down and sort of relaxes you, and it's doing a lot for your mental and your spiritual well-being. Mental wellness would be related to things like, for example, reading books, something that appeals to your cerebral and to your intelligence. Are you able to pick up a new skill or a language at this time? So when we talk about wellness and well-being, it's also knowing that part of it is like sometimes if we need a little bit of extra support and help, knowing when to look for them. So if we need some kind of a counseling or a support group or professional advice, such services are actually available online. So if we contact the organization, for example, the foundation, they would be able to refer you to the right organization and service. And I must say that when we ask for help, it is not a sign of weakness, because I think it requires courage to acknowledge that you need help, to be aware of your own vulnerabilities. So I think that requires courage. So it is not a sign of weakness at all. And so there are days when we feel that, again, if we feel a bit more challenged and we are not able to achieve as much, it's okay. So I try to tell myself that, hey, just for this day, this one tiny baby step is enough for me. I don't have to do a lot, even just a little bit, it's good enough. So again, it is back to this compassion and this gentleness with oneself. And so, and I think no man is an island. So if we are a part of a community, it's so important to be able to support one another. I think that there is joy in giving your time and your patience and your advice to someone who needs it. So when we connect with people when we connect with other people in our community, it is so important to validate the experiences and the feelings of these people, and to not say that, oh, that is not important, or like you can do better. It is okay. Sometimes we have a really bad day. It is all right. We are there for them if they really need our help. So the two last things that I want to mention would be to really practice gratitude, generosity, and love. That is so important. And also that if you do not sort of, if you fall short of your own expectations, recognize that we are all humans, we are not perfect, and it's okay to not hit the target from time to time. It is all right. So I've been reading reports that in the last few weeks, particularly people from the Asian communities, they've been experiencing racism. So I want to share some of these links with you. And I believe that a set of these PowerPoint slides would be available at the Mental Health Foundation website later. So some of these things would be very helpful. And so if you experience any form of racism, whether it's face-to-face or online, you can report these incidents at any of these links here. Some of them are state and federal, some of them are also by ABC and also by the Asian Australian Alliance as well. So I also want to share with you some of the resources or the opportunities the foundation is offering. So, so some of you might be interested in being a multicultural ambassador for the foundation, and I found that that gives you an opportunity to really share your gifts, your skills, and your talents with the foundation, and also offers support services to people in the community. I think the foundation is also organizing a mental health survey at the moment. So by taking part in the survey, you are actually informing the foundation of some of the challenges and issues that need addressing that will enrich the work of the foundation. There's also a mental health helpline that you can call, and the staff would be able to refer you to the right services and the resources that you need. And I think next month, the foundation is also organizing more mental health webinars that people from anywhere around the world can actually take part. So with that, you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. I know that this is just like a 1 hour webinar. So if you have any questions or if you have anything that you want to chat with me about, you could message me on LinkedIn.